Welcome to Window Dressing, American Trash and National Treasures. I'm Madeline Jane Auble, and this is part 2 of my 2-part Heather Locklear episode. If you haven't listened to part 1, please do so now. There is important contextual information in it. In part 2, I pick up mid-series in Melrose Place and end with Texas Justice, the 1995 made-for-TV miniseries starring Heather Locklear as the real-life Priscilla Davis, a victim of 2 attempted murder plots on the part of her husband, Texas millionaire Thomas Cullen Davis. Her portrayal of Priscilla didn't win her a lot of fanfare, but it did win her a special place in my heart. But before we get to Priscilla, let's get back to Amanda Woodward. In Season 4 of Melrose Place, Billy is married to his first wife, not counting Allison, Brooke. Brooke is played by Kristin Davis of Sex and the City fame. Melrose Place creator Darren Star also created Sex and the City. Brooke is a poor little rich girl type who finagled her way into working at D&D advertising. She resents Amanda for reasons that I forget, mainly Billy-related, I'm sure. But it's not Amanda Brooke needs to worry about, it's Allison, who is faking being blind to get back into Billy's good graces. This delightful storyline also includes alcoholism and a stalker, but not Amanda, so that's all I will say about it. In episode 4 of season 4, entitled Simply Shocking, Brooke breaks into Amanda's locked file in her office and discovers an out-of-state driver's license with Amanda's picture on it, but a different last name. Brooke does a deep dive into Amanda's past, including a trip to Miami to find what turns out to be Amanda's husband. She discovers that Amanda has faked her own death and started a new life under an assumed name. Brooke confronts Amanda with the proof of what she has found. Amanda, who is dressed in an iconically trashy yet buttoned-up ice blue satin business suit, lunges for Brooke's throat, literally. She grabs Brooke by the neck and pushes her up against the wall and says, "Those were my personal files." Brooke squeals like a teacup poodle. She says to Amanda while Amanda's hands are around her throat, "I'm willing to respect that if you'll just let go of me. Amanda, come on, you're hurting me." Once released from Amanda's grip, Brooke gleefully blackmails her with a full list of demands. Amanda, tears in her eyes, tries to explain that her ex-husband is a dangerous man and that he was physically abusive, but Brooke is an unusually naive adversary. This is one of Heather Locklear's most iconic scenes as Amanda Woodward. The slutty business suit, quick temper, and uncharacteristic tears make this performance the epitome of high camp, soapy delight. I absolutely love Amanda here, and Brooke proves a similar point as Joe did last week, that Amanda is blamed over and over again for the actions of men. Brooke weirdly assumes that Amanda changed her identity just to get out of her marriage, not to escape an abuser. Amanda is the one who has to suffer the consequences of her husband's cruelty beyond the bruises and shame, but it's Brooke who rubs it in. Why? Because she is threatened by Amanda's bouncy blonde hair and effortless authority. Regardless of Brooke's motivations, the blame went on Amanda, and she is left to deal with it just as she dealt with her first pregnancy, alone. Later in the episode, Amanda sits alone in her office wearing a similar shade of baby blue as her satin power suit, but this time in a sleeveless mini dress. It's very similar to the dress given to Pamela Anderson by Tommy Lee on Pamela's birthday as captured on the infamous sex tape, or more accurately stated, home movie. Amanda sits at her desk, methodically shredding all files in her personal file. Awesome move, Amanda. In episodes 7 and 8 of season 4, entitled Let the Games Begin and Dial M for Melrose, a play on Dial M for Murder, Amanda's husband, Jack, is murdered. He is the one she ran away from that comes back into her life via the breadcrumb trail left by the blackmailing Brooke. Jack, played by Antonio Sabato, was not only physically abusive, but he was emotionally abusive as well. He moved from Miami to Los Angeles after locating Amanda. Jack tells her he is getting married and is willing to go through with their divorce, but he would like her to meet his new fiancée. Amanda agrees. She arrives at Jack's Los Angeles home with a bottle of wine in hand to a setup that leaves her vulnerable and him dead. He lets her in, thanks her for the wine, and quickly locks the door behind her. He leads her into the dining room, where a giant painted portrait of her hangs over the mantel. He tells her he brought it all the way from Miami. She asks where his fiancée is. He says, "Right here. You're the only woman I'll ever be married to." She tries to run. He grabs her and says, "Amanda, you're mine. Tonight and for the rest of your life, you're mine." The episode ends on a cliffhanger. In the conclusion to this dramatic storyline in the next episode, Dial M for Melrose, Amanda is literally caught in Jack's grip. She says, "You're hurting me." He responds, "I don't want to, not unless you force me. Do you understand that?" Amanda looks down, nods, and says, "Uh-huh." The way she does this is familiar to anyone who has ever been physically abused or emotionally berated. You give in. On Valentine's Day 2 decades ago, my ex-boyfriend showed up to my house. He came bearing gifts. His wasn't the thoughtful wine Amanda brought Jack. It was a cheap roadside Valentine's Day basket. I tried to slam the door in his face, but he pushed his way past me and beat me up so badly I still have marks. I barricaded myself in the bathroom for protection. He got in and kicked me while I lay on the floor. The neighbors called the cops. Later that night, I packed up what I could and left. I drove to California in the middle of the night, and I never went back. He came after me. Amanda sees her chance to escape. She knees him in the balls and runs up the staircase. Jack follows her up and forces her onto the bed. He attempts to rape her. When she fights back, he throws her across the room. She manages to escape onto the stairway landing. He lunges at her and falls over the railing and down to the marble-floored foyer below. Splat. This is the part where I confess to murder. Just kidding. My ex is still alive and serving 50 years in federal prison for crimes unrelated to me. But the experience ruined Valentine's Day for me forever. Amanda, wearing a casual white short-sleeve button-up blouse and black slacks with chunky-heeled boots because it was her day off, calls Peter for help. Dr. Peter Burns, played by Jack Wagner, is the doctor that Taylor McBride, Lisa Rinna's character, is obsessed with and moved across the country to stalk. He is an eventual spouse of Amanda, also tried to murder her, and has his own history of dual identities. But in this instance, he helps her. He tells her to leave and covers up the crime. Where have all the good men gone? Well, I'll tell you. Jack Wagner, the actor who played Peter, later went on to date Locklear and was caught in a vicious and physically abusive fight with her. So, I guess there are none. In the last season of Melrose Place, Season 7, things have shifted pretty dramatically. Amanda is now married to Kyle. Peter is engaged to Amanda's high school best friend Eve, played by Rena Sofer, but no one knows that Amanda and Eve have known each other that long. Not Amanda's husband Kyle or Eve's fiancé Peter. Not until Kyle catches the two women visiting an old lady in the small town that Peter and Eve have chosen for their wedding ceremony. The woman is Eve's grandmother, but knows Amanda too. When Kyle confronts them, they are forced to reveal their secret. Amanda is wearing a strange cobalt blue mini dress with a jacquard velvet floral jacket in red with blue piping that matches her dress. Eve is dressed in a slate gray slip dress that is cut on the bias. It is the dress she is getting married in, and it is perfect for the demure and casual bride of 1998. They tell Kyle that in high school, Eve's boyfriend tried to rape Amanda, and in a rage-fueled act of protection, Amanda pushed him off the back of the high school stadium bleachers. He died, and she served 15 years in prison for murder. Amanda testified on Eve's behalf, but she wasn't believed. In Eve's words, the lawyers made me out to be some kind of a whore. Amanda visited Eve in prison once a month for all 15 years she served. When Eve got out, Amanda helped her get back on her feet. She even set her up with her ex-husband, Peter. Kyle, Amanda's current husband, threatens to tell Peter, Eve's future husband, about Eve's past. Amanda convinces him not to, but Kyle does end up telling Peter down the line during the height of his alcohol/pill addiction, an addiction that is brought on by his belief that he is sterile thanks to false lab results delivered to him by Peter. Kyle's results got mixed up with his brother's. This comes up when Kyle and Amanda are trying to, and eventually do, conceive a baby later in the season. In a brilliantly titled Season 7 episode, They Shoot Blanks, Don't They?, Amanda loses her baby. They Shoot Blanks, Don't They? Is a play on They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, the 1969 Sidney Pollack film starring Jane Fonda that I discussed in my first Jane Fonda episode back in Season 1 of Window Dressing. While Kyle is in rehab for his pill/alcohol addiction, brought on by his perceived inability to conceive a child, he hears that Amanda is cheating on him with Peter. He hears this from Peter's wife, and Amanda's now estranged friend, Eve. He also finds out that Amanda is pregnant. Putting 2 and 2 together, Kyle thinks that Amanda is carrying Peter's baby. He breaks out of rehab and sets out to find and destroy Peter. He attacks Peter in his nightclub, where Peter had gone to wait for him after finding out he had escaped from rehab and was after him. Peter and Kyle fight. Amanda shows up to stop it, wearing a ribbed dark gray turtleneck, black slacks, and chunky heeled boots, very similar to the ones she was wearing when her husband Jack fell to his death. In her efforts to break up the fight, she is inadvertently thrown through a plate glass window and down to the floor below. This is obviously Kyle's fault. Amanda loses her baby, her and Kyle's baby. Amanda forgives Kyle, but not before having to prove to him that it was, in fact, his child she lost. Funny how the literal victim is left with the weight of injury and the responsibility of repair. This is what makes Amanda a woman. Or as Lana Del Rey would say, this is what makes us girls. Amanda doesn't get to opt out of the violence endemic to our sex. Even with all the boys' club posturing and office politics, she is still a bitch recovering from domestic abuse. Just like the rest of us. In real life, Heather Locklear not only had to play the role of the object for the camera, she also experienced erasure and heightened violence as she aged out of objectification. I have spent hours watching interviews and clips of her over her career, trying to get a sense of what she was feeling in those moments. My conclusion is she was feeling what I felt in my 20s and early 30s, and now, to be frank. It's what many women feel at any age, angry, sick to death of playing nice, but knowing it's the only option. I watch her say, "Oh yeah," with glazed over eyes every time Howard Stern asks her if she would fuck him. I see her heart drop, listening to interviewers talk about her ex-husband Tommy Lee's cock. I hear her quiet the screaming in her own head when she is told to calm down and be nice. If you think that any type of woman gets out of those expectations, you're wrong. It's sexist platitudes laced with directives like play nice, you get more flies with honey, and so on, that are the most threatening to women. What Amanda Woodward did, and by extension Heather Locklear, was spit in the face of nice. And she did it with her tits out and her hair gleaming like the most precious piece of gold any gold digger had ever seen. She is a babe for women, a babe for blondes, and a babe for feminism. The next and final piece of Heather Locklear's work I am going to talk about is the 1995 ABC miniseries Texas Justice. Her character, Priscilla Davis, is based on a real woman, and the story is based on a real crime. Thomas Cullen Davis, Priscilla's husband and notorious Texas millionaire, attempts to kill his wife Priscilla during their contentious divorce. Cullen is played by Peter Strauss. He shoots Priscilla, but she survives the shot. He succeeds in killing her boyfriend Stan, played by Brad Leland, and her daughter from another marriage, Andrea. Andrea is played by Haley Miller. Suzanne, a friend of Priscilla's older daughter, Janet, was on the property that night. Suzanne is played by Tracy Maddox, and Janet is played by Deborah Kellner. Suzanne managed to escape injury and ID the man with the gun as Cullen. A trial ensues specifically for the crime of killing the 12-year-old Andrea. Cullen is not tried for the attempted murder of Priscilla or the murder of her boyfriend. In Texas at the time of the crime, 1976, a wife not only couldn't be forced to testify against her husband, which is how the law is written in most states, but she wasn't allowed to, which meant that the DA only prosecuted Andrea's murder at that time. The capital murder charge was unusual, but because he was in the act of committing another felony at the time of the murder, breaking and entering into his wife's home, their former home together, it was considered a capital offense. Cullen was acquitted. After his first acquittal, and amid their divorce proceedings, which were very public, he plotted to have Priscilla and several others killed, including a judge. This time by a hired gun. The man he hired to do these jobs went directly to the FBI with what he knew. In a sting operation, the Bureau captured Cullen on video and audio tape, not only admitting to his intentions, but also exchanging money to have them fulfilled. Cullen was again arrested and tried, this time for conspiracy to commit murder. That trial was declared a mistrial as a result of a hung jury. He was tried for a third time and acquitted. Priscilla also lost her civil suit against Cullen. After their divorce was final, he married Karen Masters in 1979. Karen was played by Susan Walters. They divorced in 2016. Cullen never served a day in prison. He is 90 years old today and lives in Texas. Priscilla died in 2001 at age 59 of breast cancer. She was only awarded $3.5 million in their divorce settlement. Cullen had inherited $100 million at the time of their marriage upon the death of his father. Priscilla was a badass, and Heather played her with a twinkle of feminine rage that is really hard to explain, but I'm going to try. Her ineffable fire comes from her Texan blonde curls and her unapologetic airs. The way Priscilla was described in 1976 and 1995 put a lot of emphasis on how trashy or brash she was. The implication is that the reason for Cullen's violence was her lack of decorum. Even the IMDB synopsis of the miniseries is laced with a heavy dose of victim blaming. Here is that synopsis verbatim. It's Reversal of Fortune meets Jerry Springer in this made-for-TV miniseries, which concerns the true-life tale of Texas oil magnate on trial for conspiring to murder his brassy ex-wife, and for very successfully doing away with her lover and her daughter. Texas Justice stars Peter Strauss as Cullen Davis, a millionaire businessman who falls in love with tempestuous, lower-class Priscilla, Heather Locklear, a young woman with a checkered past and a temper to match. When their relationship goes sour, Cullen's jealousy flares up and he does the unthinkable. But in this courtroom, he attempts to clear his name with the help of the grandstanding, high-powered attorney Richard Haynes, Dennis Farina. Heather's performance as Priscilla was slammed in the press in a way that makes it clear that Priscilla's perceived character is what is being critiqued. God forbid a woman be loud, fun, blonde, and awesome. Of course, this critique extends not only to the real-life Priscilla, or Locklear's portrayal of her, but also to Locklear herself. The Orlando Sentinel said, on the premiere of the miniseries, "Packed into circulation-stopping miniskirts, Heather Locklear flounces her way to disaster tonight as Priscilla Davis in ABC's Texas Justice." This also references her character on Melrose Place, Amanda Woodward's known wardrobe choice of mini-skirted suits. The same skirts that Jody Gould, author of the book Heather, described as asking for sexual harassment if worn in the real world of business. In the spirit of women-hating journalism, let's flounce our way into the miniseries. The first time we see evidence of Cullen being embarrassed by his new wife is at a formal function. She appears to be having too much fun and getting too much attention from the men in the room for Cullen's liking. He tells her to go hang out with the women. She says, "No, they hate me." You understand by the way she says it and the way he receives what she is saying that these women think she is trash, and so does he. They leave the party to go to a downtown dive bar upon Priscilla's request. She changes out of her formal evening attire and into a black miniskirt, cowboy hat, and a nameplate necklace that reads, "Rich Bitch." Cullen also changes. He puts on his best rough-and-tumble salt-of-the-earth look, accepting a leather jacket and Rolex. He starts a game of pool with Dennis Church, played by Lewis Smith, husband of Priscilla's friend Darlene, played by Linda Hart. Dennis is the man that Cullen later hires to murder his wife, but instead he goes to the FBI. Darlene and Priscilla are playing pinball and smoking cigarettes. Darlene mentions that Lewis is a hustler, specifically a pool hustler. Priscilla asks Darlene to ask him to go easy on Cullen, given their friendship. When Priscilla and Cullen get back home, she is sitting in front of her vanity mirror, getting ready for bed, wearing a white lace nightgown. He grabs her by her bouncy blonde curls violently. He says, "Think I don't got eyes to see with?" This snarling accusation is in reference to Priscilla's request to Darlene that Dennis not hustle Cullen. Priscilla replies, "Cullen, that hurts." He continues to berate her in a tone of voice that feels more violent than the hair pulling. She says, "Stop it." He says, "You don't tell me when to stop. I tell you. You got that?" Whether or not a man has ever said this to you explicitly, I think there are very few women out there who haven't been told that they are not in control and that their attempts to be so are useless and wrong. He seems to be responding to a perceived emasculation as a result of Priscilla stepping out of the role allotted to her by him. Emasculating a man is a sexist notion in and of itself. It is not the job of women to hold up male masculinity. Simply existing, even when that existence is threatening or embarrassing to a man, is not a crime. It just shakes frail egos like Cullen's. In this case, it seems to me that Priscilla was simply protecting her partner. But again, even the word partner assumes a level of value she is not afforded. It is incorrect and a waste of language to refer to partnership in the majority of relationships between a man and a woman, because that simply isn't in alignment with the actual value placed on women, specifically a certain kind of woman, and as we will see, Priscilla's kind doesn't count for much in her husband's eyes, evidenced by Cullen's words to a friend a few scenes later. He says, of Priscilla and her kind, There's nothing wrong with a little flash in a man's life, but after a while, it's like leaving your Christmas tree up all year long. It just never does fit in with the rest of your furniture. Meaning she is decorative and disposable. My favorite scene takes place at Cullen and Priscilla's 6th wedding anniversary. Cullen is yet again embarrassed by his dazzling wife's ability to pull focus. She is wearing a red sequin dress and a garishly expensive diamond necklace given to her by Cullen for their anniversary that night. She tops her look off with sky-high blonde curls and a limp, which she got as a result of a skiing accident in Vermont. She pulls Cullen onto the dance floor, where she leans on him heavily due to her injury. He treats her with palpable disdain and says, "Do you have to hang on me like that?" She says, "I need support. I can't stand on my own, honey." He says, "That's for damn sure." She reminds him of a time when he wasn't so reliant on, as she put it, this society crap. A time when it was just the two of them. He says, "Is that before you flew to Vermont and slept with that damned hippie?" Awesome line. Cullen is referring to a man that she brought home on the jet with her after skiing in Vermont. She says, "You're wrong about that. You have always been the number one man." She grabs his ass as she says this. He screams, pushes her, and says, among other things, "Can't you even pretend to have a bit of class?" She turns and starts to walk away. She says, "That's it." He grabs her violently, turns her around, and says, "I'll take that necklace back." She yells, "Oh, you're not going to put this around the neck of some young whore?" He screams, "I was going to put it in the office safe, but now that you mention it, I can do whatever I want with my property." She says, "Let me just remind you that under Texas law, this necklace is our property." He responds, "Don't you play that game with me, sweetheart. I've been there before." She says, "Never with me, sweetie, never with me. You ain't king of this playground." She grabs the necklace and says, "This ain't no takesy-backsy." She walks off limping and knocking a few things over as she goes. This is truly one of the best moments I have seen on the small screen. The way Queen of TV Heather Locklear delivers the line, "No takesy-backsy," lends new fire to the battle millions of women are currently embroiled in against verbally, and in this case, physically abusive men. My main emotion is pride in my kind of woman, the Christmas tree kind. To be shamed for not acting right is a deeply humiliating experience, especially if it is coming from a man you should be able to trust. The story of Priscilla and Cullen is a story of a man trying to throw away a woman who stepped out of her assigned role as a prop or plaything. When she wouldn't allow him to toss her aside with ease, he tries to kill her, killing 2 people in the process. No one should be surprised that he walked away from the charges in all 3 trials, because men rarely have to be accountable. Period. Especially if the victim is a woman who is demanding to be respected as she is, without bending to the rules of the patriarchy, or in this case, the money-fueled class system that the patriarchy was built on. She threatens him and his kind with every breath she takes, because she is not living her life according to a set of rules that keep her contained. Skipping forward quite a bit, to post the first attempt on Priscilla's life after the loss of her daughter and her boyfriend at the hands of Cullen. Priscilla tries to go back to life as usual. She's still in a contentious divorce, still living in their marriage home, and still a target. The FBI arrested Cullen during a sting operation for conspiracy to commit murder. Priscilla and others, including some judges, were on Cullen's hit list. The FBI has him on tape, ordering the hits and exchanging money for the jobs. When Priscilla finds out about Cullen's latest plan, she goes down to the DA's office, dressed in a fantastic pale purple flouncy floral mini dress and gold necklace. She is furious and scared. Her hair is shorter, but is still teased up sky-high in ringlet curls. She asked them, the prosecutors, what they are going to do knowing Cullen is actively plotting to kill her, again. The younger prosecutor says, "Desire is not a crime." She says, "Maybe you just ain't ever desired something enough to know." Priscilla hit him hard with a razor-sharp emasculation that couldn't be called anything but an attempt at justice. And just as a reminder, it is not the job of women to support masculinity, specifically when the man in question's efforts or lack thereof are failing her. Later that day, Priscilla goes to lunch with the local reporter who has been on her side since the first trial. He is played by Dean Norris. She is wearing the same ruffled floral dress and gold necklace as before. She shows him the gun she has holstered on her matching garter belt when he inquires about her safety. He asks her, "How did you feel when you heard about Cullen's arrest?" She says, "Well, you know the story about the boy who cried wolf? Or should I say, the loose hussy that cried wolf?" He says, "The whole town is seeing wolf tracks." He reads her a bit from a newspaper article that announces Cullen has been kicked off the social registry. Priscilla is beside herself with joy. She says, "Woo-hoo!" loudly in the restaurant. Once again, she pulls focus with her brash manners and keeps it with her bouncy blonde curls. Crying wolf is something female victims are accused of constantly. You are only allotted so many social graces for the vast amounts of trauma that have been packed into your life as a woman. The accusation of lying about violence against women and the effects it has on us physically and emotionally is an intensely sexist one. If there was ever a trigger phrase, it would be crying wolf. You know who cried wolf? Little Red fucking Riding Hood. The night before the second trial, the conspiracy to commit murder trial, Priscilla is in her dressing room at home in front of her vanity, the same location she was the first time Cullen assaulted and humiliated her. She is wearing a white slip, cigarette in her mouth, trying to decide what to wear to court tomorrow. She pulls several Chanel suits from a rolling rack behind her and holds them up to her in front of the mirror. In the process, she trips and experiences a sharp pain in her ankle, the ankle she injured on her skiing trip before the divorce and multiple attempted murders. She reaches for the pain pills that she has since become dependent on. This scene has a real sorry wrong number feeling to it. Either the 1989 TV movie version starring Lonnie Anderson or the original 1948 film version starring Barbara Stanwyck. Heather Locklear nails the vicious yet vulnerable quality one needs to contend with a spousal murder plot. Texas Justice isn't simply a TV movie of the week, but a retelling of a true crime, and Locklear's character Priscilla is a real woman, played with the dimension of a diamond. A portrayal that rivals Casino's real-life femme fatale Ginger, played by Sharon Stone. Ginger, like Priscilla, was a woman who suffered at the hands of men who tried and failed to contain her. Both women refused to be disposable. But if you can't be trashed, you become a hussy who cried wolf. Thank you for listening to Window Dressing, American Trash and National Treasures. This is the conclusion to my two-part Heather Locklear episode. I honestly could and maybe one day will revisit her, especially the Dynasty years. I want to thank the women who make the podcast Bitchslap. Bitchslap is a Melrose Place rewatch podcast that I love and recommend listening to. It helped me tremendously when I needed to be immersed in all things Melrose. I will be back in 2 weeks with the next episode of Window Dressing, American Trash and National Treasures. Thank you for listening. I'm Madeline Jane Auble.